friends, this is Dr. John WorldPeace, JD. It's August the 14th, 4:39 p.m. Mountain Time. I want to talk to you about this New York Child Victim Act of 2019 and its global repercussions. This is the act out of New York that allows the abusers by pedophiles to have no statute of limitations, and they can file lawsuits for the next year no matter when they were abused, and then the old statute of limitations will begin to apply again, I suppose. This New York Child Victims Act is going to cause a massive global change in the world human society. This is an astounding piece of legislation, quite frankly. American law and corrupt Republican judges have severely limited the application of class action lawsuits. The purpose was to protect big corporate entities and churches from paying a just compensation for their civil wrongs. Now, without the protection of these corporations and churches through the class action suit, which forces people to join the class action, then there was strong pressure and consequences for not joining the class action. Well, they've weakened that to such an extent now that they're not going to be able to force these people into a class action, and that's going to amount to unlimited damages, and that's not going to be good for these people who have protected these pedophiles. Now these lawsuits are going to bankrupt maybe the Boy Scouts and probably the Catholic Church and many other good entities. Without the limitations of class action lawsuits, these organizations and churches are not going to be able to stay out of bankruptcy because they will not be able to limit their liability. I have not read anything about how this new law is going to interact with bankruptcy, but bankruptcy law is federal law, and this is a state law. The size and scope of the number of pedophile crimes has been hidden by making it almost impossible to prosecute. So no one really knows the scope of how many lawsuits are going to be filed. Mainly we are talking about boys and men, but that's going to expand out, I can assure you, to little girls and men and priests. And if the nuns in the Catholic Church begin to open up, I don't think the Catholic Church will survive. Priests have used convents as their personal brothels since the founding of the Catholic Church. Now, people get upset when you say those things about the church, but that's the reality. That is the reality, that priests, not in every church, but priests have used some convents as their personal brothels. This legislation is going to catch fire and be cloned in the world, human society, and there will be many suicides, bankruptcies, and so forth as a repercussion or reaction. The positive side will be the many, many healings of abused victims who will gain some relief just being able to tell their story. In my opinion, the Me Too movement will be shown to be the catalyst of whatever comes of this pedophile legislation. I think as these child, now adult victims come forward, more women will jump onto the Me Too wagon and demand similar legislation with a window to file claims no matter how old. It's just going to be a natural progression of what's going on here. The number of people affected by that potential Pandora's box will rip through the whole world human society like wildfire. Marriages will end, careers will be ended, companies will go broke, families will be destroyed, and innocent children who are not subjected to pedophiles will have to confront the dark side of their fathers' and grandfathers' sexual abuse of women. Cynicism will take hold and strike the institution of marriage to its core. The sins of these pedophiles are great. Great in the sense that so many pedophiles have been protected for centuries. There's going to be uncontrolled outrage at some of the pedophiles having harmed an unbelievable number of innocent children. The numbers will overwhelm the innocent and ignorance of the average person regarding the reality of these abominations. So many people live a sheltered life, believing entities like the Boy Scouts and the church bureaucrats are doing good across the board, and they're not. Their organization, they're subject to power and money and corruption, and when they have the protection of the law and protection of the politicians, then things like pedophilia go on and on and on. This pedophile thing with the Catholic Church has been coming for a very long time. Trust for many will take a holiday because people will be struck down with the thought that their most trusted counselors were in truth protecting monsters. There is a darkness that pervades all large entities having to do with preserving these organizations by closing the doors to truth and justice. Great social change will come. For instance, the Catholic Church is going to come to the realization that celibacy is an unworkable philosophy within the church. The only way to stop pedophiles and a culture of homosexuality in the church will be opening up the Catholic Church to equal opportunities for women throughout the Catholic Church as the only way to significantly reduce the homosexuality among the clergy, as well as child abuse and sexual abuse of the nuns. The whole world human society is about to transition to a higher level of consciousness, and science and technology will expand far beyond the average person's ability to comprehend what is happening and to cope. So many people are going to be lost in the incredible amount of change coming and the pace at which it comes, even in just the next 20 years. There's going to be a simplification of life, and that means a reduction in consumerism and greed and such, and that's going to bring on an economic depression of global proportions. If the millennials come along and say, we just don't want to accumulate all this stuff of our parents and grandparents, and we're going to live simpler, then folks, they're going to quit buying. And when they quit buying, the companies that are selling are going to be in trouble. Most corporations don't operate on a real big profit margin at the very bottom line. So if they lose 10% of sales, they're in trouble. And if they're heavily indebted, or what's called leveraged, then 10% drop, a quick 10% drop in sales can bankrupt them. The evil that was the election of Donald Trump is going to be one event, the one event to set the world on fire. It will be the watershed moment globally, and people will refer to the time when Trump was elected. I've always maintained that the election of Donald Trump was to wake up Americans and the rest of the world as to just how corrupt money and power in the world human society has grown. All the dirty laundry will be exposed. People are going to be stunned and lost as they lose trust in just about everything. The anti-pedophile movement is linked up with the Me Too movement, will shake the foundation of the world human society to its core. In the end, we'll move toward a more sane and just world human society, and that will be a good thing. But it will be a decades-long process. But the Me Too movement started it, and now the children that were abused by pedophiles have taken that as their template, if you will, to get justice, the way the women in Me Too want justice. And as the pedophile children that were abused by pedophiles, as that starts to develop, then the Me Too people, women, are going to want a window where the statute of limitation is waived, and all these women who were abused 60 years ago can have their day in court the way that these abused children are getting ready to have their day in court. Remember, this law is just in New York. And as this thing develops, it's going to spread coast to coast, and then it's going to spread in the rest of the world. Women are second-class citizens globally, and the time has come to put an end to that. This is Dr. John WorldPeace, August 14th, 4:52 p.m. Mountain Time. Thank you for your consideration. Have a good evening.